with that, we'll open it up to this late arriving media crowd that must have enjoyed the weekend. That's usually $10 that we put in the kitty for. We'll have a big bash at the end of the year at my place.
So maybe if you win, I'll be on time.
I don't think it has anything to do with winning. I think it has to do with being on time.
This past college football offseason was arguably the craziest we've seen in college football history. Between the transfer portal, NIL deals, and a bunch of coaching changes, college football was crazier than ever before. One of the biggest moves was Brian Kelly going from Notre Dame to LSU. After the Brian Kelly news, I posted a video where I shared my thoughts on Kelly leaving Notre Dame for a brand new program. That video was nearly a year ago, so I don't exactly remember everything I talked about. But one thing I'm certain on is that I was wrong. And it wasn't just me that was wrong. A lot of college football fans were wrong as well, because Brian Kelly proved us all wrong, showing us that he might win a championship with LSU a lot sooner than we were expecting. Before we get to today's video, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are that you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. I'm posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. So we'll just take a quick trip down memory lane back to when Brian Kelly was hired by LSU. Do you guys remember just how crazy that time was? I mean, the criticism he was receiving by the way he handled leaving Notre Dame and the fact that he signed a $100 million contract with LSU. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, he had that fake Southern accent.
Well, this is a great way to get started, and I haven't even won all my games yet. It's a great night to be a Tiger. I'm here with my family, and we are so excited to be in the great state of Louisiana, but more importantly, to be with you great fans, and to be part of what is going to be an incredible ride here at Louisiana State University.
And he was posting all those videos where he was awkwardly dancing with recruits that had all of social media talking. And it wasn't just us fans, he even got Lane Kiffin to chime in. We'll actually go back to this Lane Kiffin story later in the video. So yeah, he was kind of like a giant meme at that point, and everyone was clowning on Brian Kelly and the LSU program. And for good reason. This was a Tigers team that really was struggling ever since winning a national championship. Ed Orgeron wasn't the coach anymore, and LSU went 6-7 in 2021. After being the best team in college football just a few seasons ago, they weren't even one of the top teams in their own conference. In addition to needing to hire a brand new coaching staff, Brian Kelly also needed to add a lot of talent because this was an LSU roster that was gutted. They made some pretty solid moves in the transfer portal, but looking back at it, their biggest was getting Jaden Daniels from ASU. Now, as an Arizona State alum, and as someone that watched every Jaden Daniels snap with Arizona State, personally, I was very, very wrong on Jaden Daniels going to LSU. I said that he wouldn't do well there, and that the SEC would eat him alive. Now, he was solid with the Sun Devils, but overall, I just didn't think he'd be a good enough quarterback to do well in the SEC. But like I said, he also proved me wrong as well. And it turns out, adding Jaden Daniels from the transfer portal proved to be a massive move by the Tigers. Entering the 2022 campaign, nobody was really giving LSU any shot to do anything in the conference. The media picked them to finish 5th in their own division. So yeah, not a whole lot of expectations for this LSU team. LSU kicked off their season against Florida State, and it was a disaster of a finish for them. LSU made a pretty insane comeback at the end of the game, but they ended up falling just short, and they lost to Florida State by 1 point. And following the loss, everyone once again was clowning on the Tigers, and more importantly, they were clowning on Brian Kelly for the loss. After leaving Notre Dame the way he did, accepting all that money to be LSU's savior, and losing the first game to Florida State, he was getting criticized for good reason. But following the loss, he offered a lot of optimism with the program moving forward.
We're not happy with the outcome. We have to play better. We've got to coach better. I'm proud of the way our guys competed. There's going to be good days for this football team.
But they've got to recognize, and our coaches have to recognize, we've got to put them in good positions, and we've got to play with a sense of urgency.
Well, LSU bounced back nicely following that loss as they won 4 consecutive games to move to 4-1 on the season. During that stretch, they had an impressive come-from-behind victory against then undefeated Mississippi State. After falling behind 13-0 late in the first half, LSU outscored the Bulldogs 31-3 the rest of the way. LSU then went on the road and knocked off a 3-1 Auburn team 21-17. This was yet another impressive comeback by LSU as they were trailing 17-0 midway through the second quarter. So after that rough loss in week 1, LSU was slowly gaining momentum and they were ready to take on number 8 Tennessee at home. But the game was a disaster and LSU never really stood a chance. They were already trailing by a touchdown after the first minute, and they were trailing 20-0 just after the first quarter. LSU ended up losing the game by 27 points. It was the largest home loss of Brian Kelly's FBS career and the largest loss he had in general since the year 2000 when he was at Grand Valley State. And as you can expect, the fact that Brian Kelly once again got blown out by a top team in the country, everyone on social media was giving him criticism. Once again, people were talking about how Brian Kelly just couldn't win the big games. Regardless of which program was at, the lights were just too bright for him. Although they lost by 27 points and never really had a chance in the game, Brian Kelly was actually pretty optimistic and said that the loss wasn't really as bad as people thought it was.
We weren't as far away in that Tennessee game as the score indicated. Look, I went for a lot of fourth down situations that exacerbated the score. That could have been, let's keep it close, and everybody went like, wow, they played them tough. We didn't play the game to keep it close. We played it to win it. But we didn't play very well that day. Tennessee was the better football team that day. But when we went through it again and we watched the tape and we looked at it, we felt like we were a better football team. So I know perceptually we got lit up, and rightly so. We were poor that day. I coached poorly that day, and we deserved everything that we got. But when we looked at it internally, we didn't think that we were far off, and I think we're starting to prove that.
LSU followed up that loss with a 45-35 victory on the road at Florida. This was a back and forth game as it was tied midway through the second quarter, but LSU scored 4 consecutive touchdowns to give them the edge over the Gators. For quarterback Jaden Daniels, this was his coming out party for the Tigers. He threw for 350 yards with 3 passing touchdowns and added 50 yards on the ground with 3 rushing scores. The following week, LSU welcomed number 7 Ole Miss to town. And once again, it looked like Brian Kelly wouldn't be able to pick up that marquee victory over a top 10 opponent. Just after the first quarter, LSU already trailed 17-3 and looked like the game potentially was going to be like the Tennessee matchup where it just got out of hand. But LSU was able to respond and ran away with the game. After going down 17-3, LSU outscored Ole Miss 42-3 the rest of the game. Jaden Daniels had yet another fantastic showing as he threw for 250 yards with 2 passing touchdowns while rushing for 120 yards with 3 rushing scores. This was an LSU team that just dominated on offense and on defense and really had their best performance of the entire season. Remember earlier when I talked about that whole Brian Kelly, Lane Kiffin thing? Well, Brian Kelly had the perfect response to that Lane Kiffin tweet. After picking up that victory, LSU moved all the way to number 10 in the college football playoff rankings. Now, if you guys watched my video last week where I talked about the playoff rankings, you know that I bashed LSU for being ranked 10th. I said that the only reason they were ranked that high was that the playoff committee wanted to make Alabama's matchup look even better. And I get it, old takes exposed, I was wrong on that. But in my defense, I feel like a lot of people were wrong on that as well. Well, as you know, LSU shocked Alabama, defeating them 32-31 in overtime. Earlier in the offseason, Brian Kelly was interviewed on a podcast and said by coming to LSU, he wanted to beat Nick Saban.
Yeah, I want to beat Nick Saban. Who doesn't want to beat Nick Saban? You
sure.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
I want to play him. I want to play him in the regular season. You know, I mean that's the standard, right? That's the standard. Now he's a conference opponent, right?
Well, he got his wish and finally took down the coach. I mean, overall, it was a very impressive game for LSU as they were able to hang with Alabama. Entering the game, the Tide were a 2-touchdown favorite, and I don't think many people really gave the Tigers a chance of winning. But they were able to force overtime, and instead of tying the game and heading into a second overtime, Brian Kelly had the massive balls to go for 2 and try to pick up the victory. I mean, I know a lot of us that aren't coaches say that we would definitely go for 2 in situations like that, but given the circumstances in that a loss essentially wipes you out from SEC contention and a win pretty much puts you in the driver's seat, that definitely took some massive balls to make that decision. And for Brian Kelly, it paid off.
There was no way I was going to let somebody else decide the outcome of this game. We weren't going to come back in this locker room and say, I wish we got this call or that call, because the only people I trust are the guys in this locker room. And I will go to war with any one of you guys anytime. So when it's about winning a ball game, I'm going to let you guys decide who wins the ball.
LSU is now 7-2 on the season, and if they're able to win out, they're going to play in the SEC title game. I talked about this in my video the other day, but they still have a realistic shot of reaching the college football playoff despite having 2 losses. And this is something I could not have imagined from LSU at the start of the season, especially after they fell in week 1.
For me, just to see them grow, this was the next stage in development of our football team, and that they needed to just not think about outcome and think about one play at a time. Look, I knew after the Florida State game that we were going to get better. I knew this football team was going to be a better team in November, but I don't think that I've ever in my career kind of looked at the crystal ball and kind of said, hey, this is how many wins we're going to get or how many losses. What I did know is they had fight in them after the Florida State game. The way they came back, the way they battled, I knew that there were good days ahead for this group. How they have worked out, and that's kind of why I went for it. I'm willing to do anything for this group because I think that they have shown they'll make it happen some way. And they did again tonight.
Like I said earlier in the video, I criticized the Brian Kelly move, and I thought all the criticism he was getting in the offseason was well deserved. But as we've seen from him and his team this season, they completely proved me and the entire country wrong. So what are your thoughts on the job Brian Kelly has done at LSU this season? Did you expect them to be in the playoff contention during his first year there? And do you think the Tigers are going to be a problem in the SEC moving forward? Whatever your thoughts are on Brian Kelly and LSU, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you love college football, this is definitely the place for you. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm posting videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe if you call yourself a college football fan. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.